Good morning, everybody. My name is Neil Scahill. I'm the Chief Executive of Awards International. It's a lovely morning here in Stevenage. I hope the weather is nice where you are, and I'm looking forward to spending the next half an hour, 40 minutes or so with you, talking about how to create a world-class awards presentation. And I'm going to be joined in a second by my our associate, Donna OToole from August Creative, who's going to handle the majority of the content. Donna runs her own PR agency. She's an awards and personal branding expert based in the UK. Donna's company is completely separate. Hello, hey Donna, how you doing? I'm just introducing you. Donna's organization is completely separate from Awards International. I can hear you, Donna. I can hear you. Donna's company is completely separate from Awards International, although Donna does judge at some of our awards. And in her capacity as an independent business and as an awards expert. And she does these webinars for us to help our customers with a better chance of winning. So Donna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Okay, so Donna, I've just introduced you, and so over to you.
Thank you, Neil.
You still have,
thank you, Neil. Hello.
You still
Hi,
have
everyone.
42
Sorry.
people on the webinar, Donna.
I haven't managed to lose you all yet then.
No.
Thank you, Neil, for the introduction, and good morning, everybody. I'm so sorry for the technical glitch there, but we're back in and back on board. So I'm not sure if Neil's already said, but if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask about any awards whatsoever, then please do so, pop them in the chat box at the bottom, and I will answer those at the end of the presentation, but do feel free to add them as we go along. Yeah, today I'm going to hopefully give you some top tips and ideas for how you can improve your presentations to the judges if you've got awards finals coming up. If you have awards final coming up and you have got a presentation coming up and it's for a specific award, for example, I know the Customer Experience Awards are coming up, might be for that. Again, pop it in the chat box so that I know what you're doing, and then I might have some tips for that particular award as well. So don't be shy. You know, if you've got questions, that nothing is too silly to ask. We've heard it all before, and I quite like. So feel free to ask me whatever you like about awards. Okay, so we're going to move on now, and we're going to talk about the benefits of winning awards. So as I said, we're going to cover some general tips and pointers that should help you put together your awards presentation. I'm also going to cover topics that I'm commonly asked about when people are preparing presentations. And, you know, there's always lots of important benefits to entering and hopefully winning the awards that you're entering. And ultimately, this is an opportunity for your business to gain credibility and to build trust with your customers, which in turn is going to build brand loyalty, and we all know that brand loyalty builds your business. So not only can the presentation, you know, get you a win, hopefully, at the award you're entering, but the feedback and the evaluations that you can get from the judges when you're entering and making the presentations, also incredibly valuable for developing your team and for growing the success of business.
Donna,
okay, so, yes.
Donna, one of our customers has just asked, or one of the people on the webinar has just asked, will they get a copy of the slides? And I think it's worth saying at this point, yes, that is the case. We will send out a video of the webinar and a copy of the slides following the webinar. So you'll receive in your mailbox today. Okay.
Absolutely. And also to say, you know, if you've got other questions, do feel free at the end of the webinar to link up with me on LinkedIn, send me a personal message. I'm absolutely happy to answer anything. And I'll give you some details later about free consultation as well. So there's lots of routes to getting the answers that you need today. Okay, so I'm going to move on to how to make an award-winning presentation. And we're going to go through in this webinar how to plan your presentation, how to choose your presentation tools, to presentation team, how to create winning content, and how to present with confidence. Okay, so the next slide here is going to show you a beautiful presentation team that I was privileged to judge actually at one of the awards last year, I think it was. And I just was particularly impressed with the way that they'd put their presentation together. And I thought that it was a great example of a well-planned, successful presentation. So I'm going to use that as an example, and in our webinar, I'm going to suggest that some of the questions that you may have for your presentation might be some of these. For example, you might be thinking, is your awards presentation going to be the same or different to making a business presentation or a pitch? You might be asking what the judges expect from you, whether you should make a PowerPoint, is it better to have one presenter or a whole team, and even how long a presentation should be, and obviously lots more questions like that. We're going to come to the practical and technical tips later in our talk, as well as tips on creating content and getting confident with your pitch. But for now, I want you to just relax and turn any fears and anxieties you have about your presentation on their head and start to look at the positives, because I know everyone gets really nervous at this stage. Okay, so first of all, your presentation is going to be timed. Now, every awards program is different, and they will have a different set of times for their presentations. In fact, myself and my team have been looking at presentations for various awards this morning, and they ranged between 7 minutes and 40 minutes long for each presentation we were looking at. So do make sure that you check how long that's going to be with the specific awards organizer that for the award you've entered, because they are all different. Typically, and on average, I would say a presentation is usually 10 to 15 minutes long, plus some time for Q&A though. You're going to talk to a panel of judges, and sometimes there will be other observers in the room, but you're expected to manage your audience as many public or interrupted or thrown by any left field questions when you're mid-flow. You're going to be allowed to run your presentation just as you wish. So you are in control. You will be allowed time for questions and answers at the end of a presentation. So you always have a chance to add more detail if asked. And I would say at this stage as well that don't underestimate what an important factor the Q&A is. That's a still point scoring time. If your presentation overrun into your Q&A time, you're not giving the judges an opportunity to fill the gaps they have in their mind about your business. And you could actually lose points for that. Not necessarily for running over, but for the fact that they didn't get to ask the questions that they really needed to get to those point scoring elements. So yeah, do bear that in mind.
I can add to that, Donna, which is the judges at the customer experience awards. The chair of judges might stop you at 15 minutes because some of the judges, as chairs, feel strongly that everybody just get the same 15 minutes. So that's an example of how that can work. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, you know, if you can't say what you need to say also within the time given, you should reflect upon what you've actually included in your presentation and why you can't fit that in. You know, if there's a time boundary that is there for a reason, so do respect it. And I'd say as well, you know, just don't worry about the judges. I have lots of people say, oh, who are the judges, and oh, I'm nervous about them, but the judges are typically going to be business people like yourselves from different industries who actually are really rooting for you to do well, and there's a lot of empathy and support in the room. So, you know, don't live in fear of the judges. They're there to see you do well, and they want to pick a really good winner. Okay, so I'd say start planning your presentation first of all on a practical step by writing down all the questions you have about the event and answering them. Okay, so you need to find out how much time you have to fill, how many people are allowed in the room, if there's any requirements such as who is actually meant to be presenting. So for example, some awards will say that they actually want the CEO at the presentation, others will allow you to pick yourself. And what tools and equipment you can use on the day, as well as what the marking criteria looks like. Once you've answered these questions, you can then move on to planning exactly who can be involved, what content you're going to create, what to take along, and how much work you're going to ultimately need to do on the presentation. And I would say at this stage that an awards presentation is different to a business pitch because you're not selling your services. It's not a sales pitch to the judges. You're aiming to make a connection with them, and they already know a lot about your business because they've already and scored your award entry. So this is your opportunity to bring your story to life and to make the judges believe in you and connect with you, and to build on what you've said in your awards, not simply. So the judges may already have questions in their mind that your award entry has evoked, and they will be looking for answers to those questions. They're not looking for you to just read out what you've previously written or just say the same thing over again, although obviously your headline, facts and figures are going to feature. But they're looking for a story that builds on the details in the award entry and brings those achievements to life. I would say, to help the judges and to help yourself to score more points, it would be a good idea to make your presentation layout logical and actually fit to that criteria. So that's another reason why it's important to have the criteria in the first place. But I'll go into that in a bit more depth when we get to the content area. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly talk through how to choose your presentation tools. So it's a good idea to think through your presentation tools before you start even creating content, okay? In my experience of helping businesses to win awards and of being an awards judge, it isn't actually a one-size-fits-all tool that everybody wants to use, but there are more and less popular tools. They can all be effective if used wisely. They can all also be ineffective if they're not used wisely. So some presenters like to just stand up without the use of a screen and give an impassioned speech about their business initiative. This tends to work well for experienced speakers who are used to connecting with an audience on a one-to-one basis, or just standing out there themselves. So if you take that route, and I know that it is preferred by some people, then you just need to obviously understand that you're going to be very much in the spotlight, and you need to be extremely well rehearsed, comfortable, and know your topic inside out. Some presentation teams like to play a pre-made video to judges, and that's topping and tailing it with an introduction and a conclusion for that award. Now that can work really well if the video has been made specifically for the presentation and it therefore fits all the allocated time features and meets all the marking criteria. But if you decide to use video, please make sure that you've got a plan B, if for any reason you can't play the video, and also that the video is actually specifically for the presentation, and you're not just throwing in a sort of a marketing video and hoping that the judges can work out how you've addressed the criteria from within that, because a lack of effort will really demonstrate a lack of interest in the awards, and you're not going to maximize your opportunity to score points at that stage. So if you use a video, do make it bespoke, and it can be a very effective way of getting a lot of material actually into a short presentation, and also bringing to life your customers, for example, or your team if you're not able to bring them, for the judges. So it is a good choice. I also, particularly as a judge, I have to say, I do like mixed media in a presentation. Video can break it up, and sitting and watching presentations when you're watching lots and lots in a row can be quite tiring in some respects. So actually having some video to watch and interaction in that way is actually really nice. There's also Prezi, which is a new way of presenting on screen. If you've seen it, you'll know that it's a visual aid that's more interactive PowerPoint. Again, if you choose this tool, just make sure you know exactly how to move through the presentation while you speak, as it's not in a linear order like PowerPoint. And make sure it's there to highlight your points and to meet that criteria, not just to impress the judges with how clever you are and technical on Prezi. And then, of course, we come to PowerPoint, which is probably the most popular and the favourite tool in a awards presentation. It's not to say, however, that that is always the most effective way of doing things. So I love this slide, how to avoid death by PowerPoint. It's really easy to accidentally cause death of the judges by PowerPoint. So easy, in fact, people like David J.P. Phillips have written books on the subject. We've all been there, haven't we? Sitting in a presentation that seems to go on for hours and it taking far too long. Having to read complicated slides whilst listening to someone talk and then truly taking in what they're saying is nearly always impossible. As much as we think we can multitask, our brains actually can't. So the judges are doing a lot. They're listening to you, they're looking at their slides, they're trying to score you, they're looking at their marking criteria. So they're going to appreciate clarity and simplicity in your PowerPoint slides if you're going to use it. So don't hide behind loads of sentences, complex evaluations, and small writing that we need to try and read on your slides, or you'll actually just lose the impact and you'll just bore the judges to tears ultimately. So PowerPoint's a really great tool for making what you say memorable by giving the panel visual interpretations of your point. So use images, use graphs, links, use photographs, and use big bold statements and big bold words, and choose your colours carefully. PowerPoint's not there to give every piece of information you can possibly think of. It's not there to read from either. So, yes, by all means, we all need to have cues on our PowerPoints for the next step, but reading off a PowerPoint isn't going to help you connect with the judges, and that's what you're aiming to do. So keep it simple, keep it bold, keep it to the point, and make it clear. There's no one-size-fits-all template for the number of slides for your PowerPoint. People always ask me that. How many slides should I do? Well, every award's going to be different, and every initiative and every entry is going to be different. So the amount of slides you use is going to, to be bespoke to you. But what I would say is make sure that your slides cover all the judging criteria whilst telling your story. Structurally, I always advise that you follow through the order of the judging criteria and label the slides to make it clear to the judges which points you're actually addressing at which times. Then they'll know, did you cover innovation? She did. They'll see that on the slide. So also I'd say to improve your PowerPoint presentations quickly and easily, I'd definitely recommend watching David Phillips' TED Talk on this subject. So if you Google this guy, get his TED Talk up. He'll tell you about the most effective use of colour, of contrast, of images and of words. And it's only 20 minutes long. So 20 minutes of your life now will give you better results across all your presentations. And I'm sure you all have to use a lot of PowerPoint in your business anyway. So good investment of time that one. Okay, so how are you going to choose a presentation team? Selecting a team may be something that you're struggling with, or there may be an obvious choice, but choosing your team in plenty of time is an important factor in creating a winning presentation. There's nothing worse than being handed something you know nothing about 2 weeks before an event and told you have to present on the subject. And by the way, so in general, it's a good idea to make decisions about who's going to be in your presentation team before you even start your award entry. This way, you can check the right people will be available on the presentation day, and you'll have their full commitment and their buy-in right from the start. Your presentation team should also ideally feature the people connected to the category that you have entered. So if you're entering an award for recognition of a leader or a team, make sure those people are at least in the room or ideally part of the presentation. Put yourself in the judge's shoes. It's very hard to judge someone who is not present against others who are present. So remember, it's a competition and your team of presenters will be compared to other teams. And no matter how shy your nominee, he or she will be harder to remember if they don't meet the judges and create a personal impression. Now, if you're entering a sector or a discipline-based, think about the people who know the business, the projects, and the initiatives best. So you might be asked some tricky questions, business results, or your choices for that project by the judges. So make sure you've got someone in the team who's going to be able to answer everything that's thrown at them. But also don't rule out other people who can add a new layer of insight into your presentation. So how about bringing a customer who can express what your business is for them in their own way? It might make you stand out and it gives them an exciting day out, which is great for relationship building. Of course, you need to choose your customer wisely, and it has to be one that you can trust to stick to your script. But what I would suggest, and we've done this with clients and it's worked really well, is not to have a customer actually presenting, but to have a customer there in support during the Q&A if the judges have any questions for them particularly. That can be a nice thing to do, and it's great to bring them along to the event as well. So if you want to be taken seriously, ultimately, just don't leave your presentation to the office junior who was too scared to say no because no one else wanted to do it. Never bring someone along who just look pretty. If there's someone in the room, they ought to have a role, and you need to introduce those individuals to the judges and explain who they are and what the role is. Even if they're only there to manage your technology and click your clicker, that's fine. Just let the judges know, so I'm expecting them to speak later on. And also, of course, don't let your most talkative character run away with themselves on the day. And there's a few, you know, in a jokey way, we often say, you know, never let your FE do your presentation. It's all going to be figures and not so much emotion. You know, you could go the other way around on that. So what you want is a real balance. And actually, a good team, these guys here on the screen, they were a really good team because there was a balance of leadership, different roles, individuals from different parts of the business, and everybody knew which questions they would be able to answer. So do think that through and think, you know, who's going to cover which topic, who's going to answer which questions, who's going to be able to give the most effective answer. Okay, so we're going to move on now to how to create winning content. I really love this quote from Aristotle. I think it makes a really good presentation template. So it says, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So the content of your awards presentation is going to be led by a few things. And that's how long your presentation is allowed to be, what the judges already know, and the presentation criteria. So by now, you should have found out all the answers to these questions during the planning stage, as we discussed at the beginning. And most awards will use the same criteria to judge your presentation as they have done to judge your award entry. And then what they'll do is add the scores together from the entry and the presentation, give you an overall total. Most awards, I'd say, do this on a 50-50 percentage basis, but not all awards do. And I know some awards are more 60-40. So do make sure that you know that as well. Obviously, you want to give both your entry and your presentation your best effort so that you can score as highly as possible. And also don't take for granted that if you've entered an award before, that the rules are still the same, because they can often have changed. So always make sure that you've looked into that first. So if you know what the criteria are, then you can build your presentation in a logical way, as I said earlier, that addresses each point of that criteria separately as part of a bigger picture story. Make sure you have a clear beginning, middle and end, and leave nothing to assumption or chance. Okay, so with this quote, how are we going to use that as a template? So first of all, tell them what you're going to tell them. So this means make a meaningful introduction, okay? Outline your story and outline the conclusion that it's going to lead to. Make the judges believe in you at this stage already and for them to have trust in what's to follow right from the start. So for example, you could say, we're here to tell you the company has created exceptional growth in the past years through an innovative app that enhances customer experience. It's just an introduction and summary of what you're going to tell them. The next step is tell them. So at this stage, this is the content piece. You're going to highlight your most important points and those important criteria points. Explain your objectives, explain the actions that you've taken, and explain the results, whilst helping the judges to see how this fits with your company value and culture. Okay, try and use a compelling story framework, mentally checking through the criteria as you go along in order to make it easy for the judges to follow it and score, but to connect with them with a story that brings your work to life. So you might want to use case studies. This is where you might want to put some video in. You know, this is all about bringing it to life, but also hitting those important points. So be clear about which element of each criteria you're referring to and make equal effort for every single criteria point, because you'll be every part of the criteria. This is something that I see happen quite often, actually, is that organisations will think, oh, great, we've got loads to say about our innovation. So for the innovation point, they'll go on loads and loads and loads. Oh, but we haven't actually got quite so much to say about, I don't know, business impact. So we won't really say too much about that. But you've got the same potential for earning points in those as well. So if your presentation is not balanced, then the points that you score are not be balanced. So do make equal effort across all of those criteria points. So for example, if you want to score points for innovation, let's say, you would go into detail about what your innovation is, how and why it was created, and how it stands out in your industry. If there's no other product like it on the shelves, then explain that. Or if you're creating a new method of tackling an old problem for your industry, you can highlight exactly what's innovative about it. Okay, you want to show how you've created a great customer experience, for example, by making the customer shine. Now you can do this with photos, testimonials, video messages, but whatever you use, keep it succinct and high impact, okay? Not just somebody waffling on. We want lots of high impact, succinct points from the customer or about the customer, that are going to resonate with the judges. And always remember, you're trying to aim to an emotional connection with the judges, because in human nature, it's feelings that drive behaviour. So it's how you make judges feel with your story, plus then how you rationalise and substantiate your story with actual impact and evidence that's going to drive the scores that they give you. Okay, and the last point for the content is to tell them what you told them. So reiterate your biggest results and your ultimate achievements. Explain all graphs and statistics and end with a passionate conclusion that brings your story to a rewarding and happy ending. I always love there to be a hero in the story for our award presentations. So if you have a hero in your story, you need to highlight who that is. Perhaps your company is the hero of the industry. Perhaps you have a team leader who's the hero of the department. Perhaps you have a whole team or a whole department that's the hero of your company. So, you know, think about who that is. And that's something that you can really identify, use to make sure you're standing head and shoulders above the rest. I'll just say at this point, for questions, I've judged so many awards and been part of so many entries, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, that I've got loads of examples. So if you want to ask questions about different presentations I've seen and ideas and things like that, then we can go through that at the end. And I can bring that to life a bit more with some anecdotal stuff for you, which you might find helpful. Okay, and our last here is how to present with confidence. So there's some really easy and practical ways to give yourself instant confidence in an awards presentation, and a few ways that will bring long-lasting confidence but need a longer commitment. Building presentation confidence are based on the 4 T's: TED, team, transport, and technology. So TED, to get inspiration on tips on making an effective presentation quickly. Nowadays, we are very lucky to have access to TED Talks. Now, the thing about TED Talks is the speakers are infamous for making a really powerful emotional connection with their audience on an average of 18 minutes long. So there is a really good resource for getting some ideas on how to connect with an audience. And I would suggest, and also you can find TED Talks on anything. I'm sure there's probably some out there on awards, so I should probably take a look. But have a look and watch some TED Talks and write down what you find engaging and funny and powerful, and then think about how you can use similar techniques to make your presentation stand out to the judges. Okay, another easy one is the team. Of course, you need to make sure your team is well rehearsed and that you've polished every aspect of your presentation. Practice and evaluate yourselves. That's the most important point of practicing. So the best way to do that is to video your presentation. Okay, so when you've videoed your presentation, you can look back on it, and there's 2 ways of doing this that I think help. The first is to actually not watch it, but to listen to the audio. So if you listen to the audio, you're going to be able to hear the ums and the ahs and the pauses and the breaks, and you're going to hear the filler words you use all the time, or the repetitive words that you use all the time. You'll notice that more on audio because you're not looking at how you're moving about. The second way would then be to watch the whole video. Obviously, look at your body language, look at how you're standing, look at where you're standing. Are you fidgeting? Are you giving your colleague a bit of a sly look on the side that you don't want anyone to see? Actually evaluate your presentation by video, and that will give you a great way of improving it. Also, you can, of course, present to other colleagues, family, whoever you need to, but practicing and getting feedback is ultimately going to be the best thing to improve your presentation. So with then, this seems really obvious, but my goodness, how often it catches people out. To be confident on the day, you must be relaxed and calm to start with. So always assume, especially if you live in the South, that your train is going to run late. You're going to need to make a plan B to get there. Always assume that, because there's nothing worse, and I see it at every awards event. Some poor team running in massively late, never having had time to practice in the morning, feeling quite het up and not calm. You want to start your presentation calm and confident and relaxed. Okay, so give yourself lots of time, give yourself a plan B for your transport, and make sure that you start ready to make the right impression on the judges. And finally, technology. Gosh, this sounds obvious, but again, if you have new or unfamiliar technology on your presentation day, you're going to find it difficult. Make sure you have practiced your laptop, you haven't just got a different one that day. Make sure you know that your memory stick works, that you've got the right leads to connect, that you've got speakers if you're playing video. And for this, I would say actually liaise with the awards organisers or the venue to make sure that you know exactly what equipment you will need to take with you.
I think, Donna,
because, it's different.
I couldn't emphasize that point enough. The number of times we tell people what connectors to bring, we tell people that you've got to bring your own computer, that you've actually got to get it set up before, so you get 10 minutes beforehand to switch rooms if you've got 2 back-to-back presentations. A number of times we do that, and yet people still come along without laptops or with the wrong connectors. And obviously we do everything in our power to help people. But we just can't lend people laptops. And if you ask the venue, they're a professional production company, or they'll have their AV technicians in, and they want 125 quid to borrow a laptop for an hour, or they want 40 pounds for a connector. So I know it sounds silly, but you're absolutely right. And obviously, just like we did at the start of this webinar, make sure you practice with the actual technology, because the venue's Wi-Fi will not be great. I mean, we had a guy come from Dubai to do a presentation, and his whole presentation was online. He came to the Customer Experience Awards a couple of years ago. His whole presentation was online, and he couldn't do any of it because the broadband at the wherever it was at the time, Park Plaza or whatever it was, just wasn't good enough. And we can't take a feed for every room just in case a couple of people want that. We can get a feed for individuals who want to do stuff, but you're going to have to be well rehearsed, really well rehearsed in that. Anyway.
It's very simple, but to print out your presentation slides, because if it's not working, if something fails on the day, which none of us can predict sometimes, is if you've got your presentation slides printed out, then at least you can carry on. And I have seen that happen. And it is sympathetic to that. Gosh, we all hate having to deal with technology, so we're very sympathetic. And ultimately, we're not there to judge you on your actual technology presentation. We're there to judge you on what's happened, what your initiative is, how it's run, what's been happening, your business impact. So if you can carry on and do that off paper, then brilliant. You're still going to be marked in exactly the same way as you would have been had you have shown slides. So don't think you should be marked down if something like that happens. You shouldn't be. But obviously you're going to feel much better and much happier if you've addressed every point you can to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, so I'm just going to move quickly on now. We can touch on that more in questions if necessary. Oh, Neil, I think I'm getting an echo off of your technology there. There we go, thank you. So yeah, one of the things I would say, sorry Neil, I think I was talking. I think you need a headset, that end, different one. One of the things that I like, a lovely quote here, is that they may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that's one thing to note with the judges, is that you're, as I said before, you're aiming to make a connection and you're aiming to make them feel connected to you. So that's essentially where you want to be. Okay, so I think now we've come to the end of the actual presentation. So if anyone would like to answer any questions, ask me any questions rather, and I'm very happy to answer, and I'm sure Neil will be as well. So please feel free to put those in the chat screen. Got any? Unless there's anything that you have to add, Neil.
Well, I'm still here, Donna. That's for sure. But I haven't had a headset on the whole time. But no, I mean, I think that's a good summary. I just think it would be interesting to hear if anybody has any questions. I mean, obviously the Customer Experience Awards are coming up on the 28th, and we're looking forward to that. If you are attending the Customer Experience Awards, you'll get a call from one of us today, or perhaps you got a call from us yesterday. We've got a change of venue. So our awards consultants are calling round. But if you haven't spoken to them, or you haven't spoken to me, then send me an email at neil.scahill@awardsinternational.eu. I don't know if anyone can type that into the chat box, but if you've got any doubts, and people are typing now.
Okay.
There's a question there. Okay, Anna, gotcha. Okay, Laura.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, so someone can, Boris, can you type my email into the chat box there, neil.scahill@awardsinternational.eu?
Okay, and we've got some questions here to go through, so shall I start working through those?
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay, so Scott, hi Scott, thank you for your question. So Scott asks, do you have any examples of the great presentations that you've seen? Yeah, Scott, there's some, there has been some really good ones. And let me just have a little think now. I mean, obviously they're all different depending on what the award is for. I would say the most effective presentations usually have quite simple information, but it's where or a simple story to follow, but it's where the team has managed to connect with the judges on an emotional level. So, for example, now I'm just trying to remember which award that they won, and Neil, you'll probably be able to help me with this because I think you'll remember. There was a maybe it was a Digital Experience Awards. There was a company who had been helping a council, and they had basically been having to switch everything from offline to online, and in doing that, they had to get a lot of people onto Twitter who'd never used Twitter before, and they brought that to life in their presentation by explaining the project and the objectives and the actions that they took, but they brought it to life by using a case study of one of the particular people that they had helped onto Twitter. And he was a 90-year-old gentleman, and they had helped him set up his Twitter account, and then once he started using it, they said to tweet him. So he tweeted them that he wanted a cheese sandwich. So one of the people from their digital team actually went and bought him a cheese sandwich and took it around his house. So it was obviously a local initiative, so they were nearby, but it was a really lovely way to bring to life actually what their initiative had meant to the customer. The customer was ultimately every kind of person you can imagine within that boundary who needed to be able to use the internet, and yet they had taken it so far as to teach a 90-year-old how to use Twitter, and he loved it. And they were showing us some images of the tweets that he had done. So it was just a great way of connecting to the judges and a great way of bringing to life an initiative. So that way to think about it is, yes, you've got great, you had a good business idea and you've got some great business results, but who's it actually affecting? Who is the customer? And that's why I say, sometimes it'd be great to bring a customer, although I did notice somebody made a little comment here that was my comment that choose your customer wisely was funny, but it's true. You do need to use your customer wisely. So do think about, what's your initiative and how have you managed to, how could you manage to bring that to life for the judges? Because you have to remember, they don't know what you do. They don't know about your business. So, okay, so that's one question. So I'm going to move on to another question now. So from Olivia, thank you, Olivia. So she says, what are your ideas about using props? Okay, so props are interesting. They can be one thing I'm going to say here is if you bring a lot of marketing materials, which seems to be a popular thing to do, and a folder full of information to give out to the judges, they're not going to have time to read it before they judge you. So, and I'll talk specifically at the moment about the Customer Experience Awards because I know that's one that's coming up. When we're judging live, we're judging in the moment. The 25 minutes you have in the room is the same 25 minutes that we're judging you on. So as you work through your presentation, we are judging you at that moment. And the judges do not collaborate at the end. We don't discuss how we want the company. We put our own scores down in our own way and our own comments in a sealed envelope. That then leaves the room just shortly after you've left the room. So if you bring materials that you think are going to enhance your presentation and to help you to score points, the judges are not actually going to get a chance to read them. So think about how you're going to include them instead in your presentation, in the body of your presentation. It's a little bit like with award entries and supporting documents. I always say if you want to score points on something, make sure it's in the body of your award entry. It's the same principle for presentation. Anything that's supporting is optional. It may or may not get read. So don't ever think that will necessarily score you points, because it might not. So same thing with presentations. But with other props, I mean, I've seen all sorts. I think if it brings life your actual initiative, and it helps the judges to understand what it is that you're trying to tell them. So, for example, if you have created something, an innovation, and you want to bring that to life, then if you can bring that innovation with you and show that to the judges, then that of course might help. But if your innovation can't be brought, you could perhaps show that on a video. But if you bring something for the judges to just look at and fiddle with, actually not relevant, but it's perhaps you think entertaining, you may actually just be distracting them from marking you. So I actually find that quite hard when someone brings something that's not relevant to the event, because it is distracting, and we've got so much to focus on. As I said before, we've got to look at your slides, we've got to look at our criteria, we've got to think about what points we're going to give you. So anything you bring into the room, make it relevant, make it scoring. That said, it's been given a few cakes in our time. That's quite nice, and sweets. So if it's edible, you can bring it. Although bribery and corruption does not work, so I must point that out right now. So yeah, I think with props, just make sure it's relevant and it's not distracting. Otherwise, if you give the judges with a question in their head about why on earth they've got something, then you're just going to really take them off the ball, I suppose. Let's see, there's another question here. I'm not sure if this might happen in awards events, but how does one deal with situations where judges ask a question where none of your team have an answer to? Oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, that's where we need to think about the team that you're putting together for the presentation in the first place. Really, there should be an answer to every question, but I appreciate sometimes judges can ask slightly off the wall questions. I have seen that happen myself. That can throw a presentation team, and you can't possibly have prepared for it. I think all you can do is prepare as much as you possibly can and make sure that your team has a good breadth of knowledge across them. So perhaps you've got someone there who can talk about the financial business results. Perhaps you've got someone there, if it was a joint project between perhaps yourself and a client, perhaps have the client there as well as yours, which works really nicely together. If it's about, I don't know, let's say an apprenticeship scheme or something internal that you've developed, have a user from that scheme or that training process, whatever it is that you've developed. Have somebody there who can bring it to life and who can demonstrate that actually it did work, and who can answer questions. So I think striking a balance across your team of who knows what is really, really important. And ultimately, if there's something that you really, really cannot answer, then I think you have to just be honest and say, I'm afraid we can't answer that, but spin it into a positive. However, we can say X, Y, and Z. So yeah, it's a bit how long's a piece of string, that one, I'm afraid. But I hope that helps. So it's again about team selection, very important with that one. So Jane has asked, do the questions tend to be specific to the company or generic? Well, there's no set questions, Jane, with judges. So we don't get, as a judge, you don't get given questions to ask. The questions will be personal from that each individual judge, and it will be often connected. It will be obviously connected to your award entry in your presentation. And it will often be a gap that perhaps you haven't covered. So, for example, I have judged in presentations where we have felt as judges that the entrants haven't actually covered off something really important about the financial aspect of the project. So we will, try and drill down into that. It usually becomes quite obvious if there's something you're trying to cover up. So if there is something that you don't want the judges to know, you're going to really have to think about why that is, or that you're not, there is often, I should say at this point, there is often occasions where companies are working with a client who won't allow them to release data, particularly financial data on something. So if that's the case, then you can explain that. But instead of talking in numbers, perhaps you can talk in a percentage growth. so you're not actually giving their numbers away. The other thing I would say is don't try and pull the wool over the judge's eyes, because we're quite clear in the time period of your project and the results we're looking for in that. So if you start giving us results from the last 10 years because it looks more impressive, we will ask you to pick that apart. And we will ask last year's results or the last 2 years' results. So, you know, judges are really studying what you're saying to them and thinking about it. So just bear that in mind. That you know, you really need to be very honest. The other thing I'd say in relation to that about being honest is, if you've had a challenge in your business, sometimes people think, oh, we better not talk about that, that was really difficult, you know, but actually having a challenge shows, you know, how you can demonstrate how you got over that challenge, and how you've, you know, how you've improved processes, etc. since then. So I think always use your challenges to your advantage in that case. Okay, I think that's brought us to the end of the questions, Neil, unless, if I missed it. Oh yes, somebody's asked, is it a good idea to use criteria as heading for slides? Yes, something I covered in the content. Criteria as heading for slides works really well because it helps the judges to follow that through, and to necessary places. So, okay, I think if we've come to the end of the questions now, then we can move on. If anyone's got any, you know, feel free to shoot up a question if you've got something burning. As I said, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can contact Neil. Oh, here we go. Davinda has asked a quick question. How do you strike a balance with too little and too much words in a presentation? I think you need to be quite honest with yourself, actually, and look back at your presentation and think, well, how much can you take in off of that slide? You know, really honestly and truly. And that's why I say, you know, get some tips, watch that TED Talk, get some tips, because it really does show you. You know, for example, I've got a slide up here, you can see it's just got one quote on it. Even if I had 2 quotes on that, that would already be confusing. So it's not so much number of words as such. I'm going to go back and show you here. So here we go. I've just got 4 words on this slide, because it's what I'm saying around points. They're just visual points, really, to help you to remember and connect back with some of the points I was making. So they're just cues. You know, really, what's on your slide are cues. But you may want to have headline results on there. You know, the thing really, what's on your slides is what you want to be memorable. So that's people, that's results, that's, you know, and you can show those in different ways. You can show graphs, you can show big numbers, you can show customer testimonials, you know, there's all sorts of things to show. And I'm not going to say you can put this and you can't put that. Every single presentation is different. But there are ways of crowding a slide, and there are ways of keeping it clear and simplistic for the judges to be able to follow. Ultimately, we're more interested in what you're saying, what's on your slide. So I think that's probably the better way to look at it. So yeah, so there we go. I think we've come to the end of the questions. I'm going to tell you very quickly now about a training path that if you're interested, if you're the person writing entries and you want to make sure that they actually start winning the awards. I run a masterclass, which is all day at the Shard. It's great fun, really, really valuable. We pack an awful lot of information in there, very specific linguistic writing techniques that will help you in all your communications. We teach you how to strategize your awards to give you a better chance of winning, how to, again, we'll touch on presentations, also how to outreach on social media, and lots of very effective tools for improving your award entries. So the next one's the 20th of October. If you'd like to join us, because you've been on this webinar, you are entitled to £100 off the price. So you will receive an email about that as a thank you for being on the webinar. And I believe there's some awards here that Neil might like to just tell you about before we end too.
I mean, if you are interested in entering any of our awards, this will be in the email coming out shortly. Awards International's awards are unique because we hold the finals and the awards ceremony on the same day. And many of the entrants also opt to maximize the PR by making their sessions open. And that means other people can also go to watch. So our awards really are quite unique. We are independent. We are not affiliated to any big publication or institution. We specialize in business awards, and many of our awards are done within the working day. So just let us know if you want to come along, and we'll be in touch with you probably after the webinar anyway. But thank you for attending today. Thank you, Donna and Boris, for your assistance. And thank you to all of the people who stuck it out since the beginning. Anne, I think you were at the start there. Faisal, I think you were at the start. Jane, I think you were at the start. Davinda was too. So thank you to all of you, and those of you joined by telephone, and Scott as well, I noticed. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you or hearing from you sometime soon. And good luck with your presentations.
Yeah, good luck. Let's come back and tell us if you win. Look forward to seeing you at the event. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.